In the labyrinthine alleyways of Tokyo, where the neon glow of the city's heartbeat fades into obscurity, a chilling presence lingers. It is a presence born of hunger, fueled by darkness, and concealed within the depths of human guise. Here, amidst the pulsating rhythm of urban life, exists a breed apart, a species neither wholly human nor entirely beast. They are ghouls, creatures of the night who tread the fine line between predator and prey. With skin as pale as death and eyes that gleam with an otherworldly hunger, ghouls move silently through the shadows, their senses attuned to the scent of fear and the taste of blood. But it is not their appearance alone that sets them apart. Ghouls possess a ghastly secret hidden beneath the facade of their human form, a ravenous appetite for human flesh. Driven by an insatiable hunger that gnaws at their insides, ghouls stalk the streets in search of their next meal, preying upon unsuspecting victims who dare to venture too close to the darkness. For those who are unlucky enough to cross paths with a ghoul, there is little hope of escape. With razor-sharp claws and teeth as sharp as daggers, these creatures strike swiftly and without mercy, leaving behind only death and despair in their wake. The evening air hung heavy with the scent of impending danger as the news blared from the television set in Antaiku, a quaint coffee shop nestled in the heart of the 20th Ward. Reports of gruesome murders echoed through the room, casting a shadow over the patrons. Looks like there's a ghoul in the loose, Hideyoshi Nagachika remarked casually, his voice laced with a hint of mischief as he glanced at his friend, Ken Kaneki. Ken Kaneki frowned, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. Ghouls. Do you think they really exist? Hide leaned in, his red eyes gleaming with an eerie intensity. Oh, they exist, Kaneki, and they're closer than you think. Kaneki's heart skipped a beat, his mind racing with the implication of Hide's words. Was his friend implying something? Was he suggesting that he himself was a ghoul? Before Ken could dwell further on Hide's cryptic message, their attention was diverted by the arrival of their waitress, Taoka Kirishima. Hide made a bold attempt to flirt with her. Hey, you single? But only succeeded in making her retreat, her face buried in her notepad in embarrassment. Smooth, Hide, Kaneki muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. Hide grinned, nudging Ken playfully. Hey, gotta seize the opportunity when it presents itself, right? Speaking of which, when are you gonna make your move on that girl you're always ogling? Ken felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. I don't know what you're talking about. Before Ken could protest further, the object of his affection, Rise Kamishiro, walked into the cafe, her presence commanding the room. Looks like fate's giving you a chance, Kaneki, Hide teased, steering the conversation away from romance and toward more lighthearted topics. As the days passed, Ken found himself drawn deeper into Rise's orbit, their shared love for literature forging a connection between them. Yet, amidst their conversations about books and authors, Ken couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at the edges of his mind. Are you nervous? Hide asked over lunch one afternoon, noting Ken's jittery demeanor. Ken nodded, his hands fidgeting with his napkin. I managed to score a date with Rise, but I don't know what to wear or where to take her. Hide's eyes twinkled mischievously. A suit and tie, of course, all proper dressed up for your beloved Rise. Ken rolled his eyes, but Hide's antics managed to ease his nerves, if only momentarily. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ken and Rise found themselves strolling through the city streets, their conversation flowing effortlessly. As the night wore on, however, Ken's anxiety began to resurface, his mind clouded with doubts and insecurities. Why did you start reading books? Rise asked, her gaze probing, yet gentle. Ken hesitated, the memories of his father's absence weighing heavily on his heart. My father, he died when I was young. Books were the only way I could feel close to him. It always felt like I was having a conversation with him. Rise's expression softened, her own pain reflected in her eyes. I understand. I ran away from home, constantly at odds with my father. Books were my solace, my escape. As their shared vulnerability drew them closer, Ken felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. But just as he dared to dream of a future with Rise, the truth came crashing down around him. In a moment of desperation, Rise revealed her true nature, sinking her teeth into Ken's flesh with a savage hunger that left him reeling in shock and agony. As he lay bleeding on the cold pavement, Rise's ghastly form loomed over him, her eyes ablaze with primal lust. You taste so good. But before she could deliver the final blow, fate intervened. Metal beams fell from the building above, cascading down, killing Rize instantly and changing Kaneki's life forever. As he lay in the hospital bed, his body battered and broken, Rize's organs now beating within his chest, he awoke to a new reality. A reality where he was neither fully human nor fully ghoul, a Frankenstein's monster. The next day, the air was thick with tension as journalists crowded into the press conference room, their cameras poised and pens at the ready. Akihiro Kanao, a prominent figure in the medical community, stood at the podium, his expression grave. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. I am here today to address the recent operation involving Mr. Ken Kaneki. Questions flew like arrows, each one aimed at unraveling the mystery behind Kaneki's miraculous survival. Kanao's answers were measured, his explanations concise, as he detailed the grim reality of Rize Kameshiro's condition. Why did you let her die? One reporter demanded, their voice tinged with accusation. Kanao's jaw tightened, his gaze unwavering. Her death was inevitable by the time she arrived at the hospital. We did everything we could to save her, but her injuries were too severe. As Kaneki lay in his hospital bed, the events of the past week swirled in his mind like a whirlpool of chaos. He tried to convince himself that it was all a dream, but the scar on his stomach served as a cruel reminder of the truth. Kanao's visit only added to his confusion, his probing questions stirring a sense of unease within Kaneki. Why aren't you eating? Kanao asked, his eyes piercing through Kaneki's defenses. Reluctantly, Kaneki forced himself to taste the hospital food, only to recoil in disgust. It's like eating cardboard, he muttered, pushing the tray away. Released from the confines of the hospital, Kaneki ventured into the city streets with his best friend, Hideyoshi Nagachika. They found themselves at Big Girl Restaurant, but even the promise of a hearty meal couldn't dispel Kaneki's growing sense of unease. It's like I'm chewing on pig intestines, Kaneki grimaced, his appetite waning with each bite. Later, as he wandered the streets, Kaneki's senses were assaulted by the tantalizing scent of flesh. His mouth watered involuntarily, but he pushed the urge aside, determined to maintain his humanity. Back home, Kaneki watched the broadcast about ghouls, his heart pounding with dread as the truth unfolded before him. Hisashi Ogro's words echoed in his mind, sending a chill down his spine. All food makes ghouls nauseous, Ogura had said, his voice filled with certainty. In a panic, Kaneki raided his refrigerator, desperate to prove Ogura wrong, but no matter how much he ate, the taste remained bitter on his tongue. Their taste buds interpret food differently. Kaneki fell to the floor in a heap of tears and snot. As night fell, Kaneki found himself face to face with a girl in distress, her fear mingling with the heady scent of her flesh. The urge to taste her blood surged within him, threatening to consume his humanity. But before he could succumb to the darkness, a figure intervened, a girl with eyes as sharp as daggers and a strength born of desperation. Touka Kirishima, a fellow ghoul, stood before him, her offer clear in the severed arm she held out. And as Kaneki stared into the abyss of his own soul, he realized that the line between man and monster had blurred beyond recognition. And in that moment, he knew that his life would never be the same again. Touka Kirishima's sharp gaze narrowed as she observed Ken Kaneki, her curiosity piqued by the crimson hue that flickered in only one of his eyes. Why won't you eat it? She demanded, gesturing toward the disembodied hand she held out to him. Kaneki's stomach churned with revulsion, his gaze flitting between Touka and the ghastly offering before him. I can't, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Touka's brow furrowed in confusion. You weren't eaten, were you? She surmised, her mind racing to piece together the puzzle before her. You were with Rize Kameshiro. A shrill ringtone pierced through the haze of Kaneki's thoughts, jolting him back to reality. With a trembling hand, he retrieved his phone, his heart pounding in his chest as he listened to the voice message from his best friend, Hideyoshi Nagachika. Hey, Kaneki. Sorry to bother you, but I got those class notes you missed. And don't forget about the book signing event later with Sen Takatsuki. I'll see you there. As Kaneki made his way to the bookstore, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of his stomach. The event was already over by the time he arrived, leaving him feeling adrift and alone in a sea of strangers. The hunger struck again, a gnawing emptiness clawing at his insides as he watched the people pass by, their scent tantalizing and intoxicating all at once. It started off small at first, only a tiny, dull pain, But soon enough, it was like a demon trying to claw its way out of his belly. The demon was screaming, "Flash! Flash! Flash!" In a desperate bid to regain control, Kaneki sought refuge in a public bathroom, his reflection mocking him in the mirror. With a roar of frustration, he lashed out, his fist connecting with the glass and drawing blood, cracking the mirror and sending shards crashing to the floor. But as the wound healed before his eyes, Kaneki's resolve wavered, his thoughts assaulted by the unrelenting hunger that threatened to consume him. Back home, Kaneki found himself drawn to Sen Takatsuki's book, The Black Goat's Egg, its pages whispering secrets that mirrored his own inner turmoil. With a sinking feeling in his chest, he realized the truth of his situation. The organs that now beat within him belonged to Rise Kamishiro, the very ghoul who had nearly taken his life. With trembling hands, Kaneki grasped the kitchen knife, his fingers curling around the handle as he contemplated the unthinkable. He lifted up his shirt and prepared to stab his stomach open, to be rid of the devil that had been once called Rise's organs. But as the blade touched his skin, his resolve crumbled, leaving him staring into the abyss of his own hunger. Desperate and alone, Kaneki sought solace in the one place he never thought to find it before. Antaiku, the cafe where ghouls and humans coexisted in an uneasy harmony. Tooka's mocking laughter echoed through the room as she confronted him with the harsh reality of his existence. It was Yoshimura, however, the wise and enigmatic owner of the cafe, who offered Kaneki a glimmer of hope in the darkness. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Kaneki followed them into the depths of the underground storage room, where Yoshimura presented Kaneki with a small package of human meat, a lifeline in a world that had turned its back on him. "Remember, Ken, you're always welcome here," he said softly, his voice a soothing balm to Kaneki's troubled soul. Tooka watched the exchange with narrowed eyes, her skepticism evident as she turned to Yoshimura. "Why are you helping him?" she demanded, her tone laced with suspicion. Yoshimura's gaze softened, a hint of sadness flickering in the depths of his eyes. "Ken is not like other ghouls. He's special," he began, his words laden with a weight that seemed to hang heavy in the air. "His origin is tied to Rise Kamishiro." Alone in his room, Kaneki stared at the package in his hands, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. With a frustrated sigh, he tossed it aside, his hunger gnawing at his insides. Rummaging through his kitchen, Kaneki's heart sank as he realized the truth. There was nothing he could consume. Nothing, that is, except for coffee. Determined to find solace in the bitter embrace of caffeine, Kaneki ventured into the bustling streets of downtown Tokyo in search of the perfect brew. But as he sampled coffee after coffee, each one failing to mask the foul taste in his mouth, his frustration grew. It was then that he encountered a light brown-haired man with thick black glasses, sharper than his even sharper senses. "Try blondie coffee," the man suggested, his smirk betraying a hint of amusement. "It's the best instant coffee around." As night fell and the city streets grew quiet, Kaneki's senses were assailed by a tantalizing aroma, a scent that stirred memories of home-cooked meals and warmth. With a desperate hunger gnawing at his insides, he followed the scent, hoping against hope that it would lead him to something, anything, he could eat. But as he rounded the corner, his hopes were dashed by the sight before him. A ghoul feasting upon the remains of a human corpse. The stench of death filled the air, choking Kaneki's senses and leaving him reeling in horror. "Why are you surprised, kid?" he sneered, his bloodied lips curling into a twisted grin. "You're a ghoul too, aren't you?" Before Kaneki could respond, a man appeared, the same man who had suggested blondie coffee. His presence a welcome relief in the midst of the chaos. With a swift kick, he sent the ghoul sprawling to the ground, his gaze cold and calculating as he turned to Kaneki. "No intruders on my turf," the mysterious ghoul declared, his voice laced with warning. And as Kaneki struggled to make sense of the chaos unfolding before him, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to take a turn for the worse.